Hi, I'm Selina, and welcome back to The Way to Wellness, a podcast limited series helping you find balance season to season. And today I am extremely excited to have Barbara Bauda with us. She is an amazing woman who has made a difference in my own life, but has made a difference in many lives quietly, just as we women do through the last 40 years, right?
Yeah.
And so today we're going to kind of unpack a little bit of an expansion on the last podcast. In the last podcast, I talked to you about the tools for change, some of the things that we need to come to terms with and identify before we even step into those pieces of change. And it's so critical, really, to kind of take some time and sit with that. But one of the reasons why I've asked Barb to come in, and I can call you Barb, right? Because
Absolutely.
you prefer
Yes.
that,
Mm-hmm.
is because her years of experience and her wisdom in the discussion we're going to have today is going to help you, as the listener, identify your true and authentic voice and learn to trust her again. So when I talk about Barb, she comes with a lot of experience, and I just want to kind of point that out, because why should we listen to anybody, right? Why do you listen to me? Well, being 248 pounds and going through so many life challenges and still coming on the other side, but also the education that I've dedicated my life to in supporting women, just as Barb has done. So Barb comes to us with 40 years of experience in mental
A
health.
long time. That sounds like, yes.
It does sound like,
Yeah.
but tell me a little bit about how you transitioned from mental health to eating disorders.
Well, at the time, it was like eating disorders were just being recognized as a disorder. And so it was very cutting edge. We hadn't progressed in our knowledge the way that they are today. And so it was just a natural transition. It was just part of mental health at that point.
So when we talk about eating disorders, Barb, one of the things that I'm always challenged with when I meet with my clients, right, is that disordered eating has a lot to do with the internal dialogues and past experiences that we've had. And so that is an area very focal to change that we aren't going to get into today. But it does kind of lend itself to, isn't that the basis of all things needing change? That inner voice, past experiences, how to manage it?
Absolutely.
Talk to that if you
Yeah.
wouldn't mind.
Well, I think we learn to talk to ourselves by the people around us. We absorb as children messages, and then we never take the time to question some of those messages. It's I'm this, I'm that. It doesn't even matter whether it's eating disorders or how we view our role as women in the world or how we view our role as women. And so, yes, the change begins internally and looking internally. I think people make a mistake by looking out and expecting that the outside is going to guide us. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking about this podcast, I was kind of thinking, this is kind of like the good news, bad news kind of part of life. We're living in a time when so much of our old beliefs are called into question, whether it's the people who lead us and not living up to those expectations or being different than we expect. So the bad news is we're in a state of transition. The good news, I think, is that we can use that then to look internally, because I think what's happening externally is causing us to turn more inward. And so these podcasts are wonderful in terms of, calling people to stop looking out there for change and bringing it in.
One of the biggest things that made a huge difference, and I know Mary Beth Pinto spoke a lot about your voice, and Barb Bauda says, and Mary Beth really, she shared that one of the things that was impactful for her own journey was that she actually sought out an external support system, and that made a difference. And it got me thinking, about that inner voice when we were preparing for our podcast today. And I remember that I had a coach in my life who said, you really need to identify who is driving your bus. And it was life impacting, Barb.
Sure. Yeah.
Life impacting. And so initially, when I started to do my own personal work, I identified it as three people: the little girl, right? The adolescent, and then at first it was the now grown up. But then I was like, wait a minute. Actually, there's a little girl, and then there's an adolescent, and then there is that young adult, probably in the early 20s, 25, where we think we know everything.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah.
But we don't
We all have
necessarily. So we know everything, and we're not listening to anyone. And then I would say it's the woman now, and I gotta share with you that I really do feel that there's some future roles driving the bus also. But as I grew to be responsive in life, I'm always checking in with who's driving my bus, and more importantly, why. One of the hardest things about that, though, is it's hard to go there without blame or shame.
Oh boy, big time.
How do we do that? How do we tell our listeners, explore yourself without coming forward and thinking about all the ways in which you can create the negative energies, the anger, the resentment, the recycling of experiences that don't feel good? How do you get to those moments, Barb, without bringing forward that negativity?
I think the negativity is part of the process. We forget in our technological society. We were just talking about AA and that immediate gratification or that immediacy.
You mean AI?
AI, that's right. I'm sorry. And so we expect things to be immediate. And when we're talking about the human condition, if you will, it is not immediate. It is a process. And so I think to expect that you're going to skip over that negativity, the anger, the blame, the shame, the whatever you want to call it, I think is misguided. And you can't do that as a human person.
And I love that. I love that you said that, because I want to say the other thing, working with people, is that one of the biggest things that we get them to come through is stop trying to negate what doesn't feel good.
Right, exactly.
Right?
It. Yes.
And
Yes.
start working with it. So when I said about the shame and the blame, that is where you can decide to shift back to the externals, right? Where you put shame and blame on everything that happened to you. And so I am victim and unable to change. Or you can deal with the negative and then ask yourself, how can I make this work for me? And one of the things that I take a lot of pride in is that actually probably, Barb, the most difficult people and points in my life are the strength that I have right now. So when somebody does get into that negative realm and they're sitting with it, because that's all you can do, right?
Right.
You sit with it. What are some of the tools that they can do? I mean, Anna and I were just talking about writing letters to people you will never send,
Right,
and burning. Like, what are some things that you would suggest?
Those are really big things, something to get it outside of yourself, but not directed at another person necessarily. So the letter writing that Anne suggested, in fact, I just went through that in my own journey of letting go of some things. It can be very powerful. Journaling every day is another powerful technique. And it doesn't, I think what happens is that people take a broad brush and go, oh my gosh, I have to fix everything. Well, that's not true. Start with small steps. We have these colloquial phrases, I guess, that, the 1,000-mile journey begins with one step. Well, okay, but make that work for you. I brought this, it'll be a little commercial for you. 30 Days to Better Balance. I worked this myself, actually. It was quite fun. And it's brief. You don't have to spend more than 10 minutes a day on it, but it really gets you to pause and stop and reflect. And that's the first part of the journey. The other part of the journey, and you referred to Mary Beth, is seeking out a trusted partner who can walk the journey for you, not with you, not for you, but with you. And I think that's very important, a trusted partner. And whether that's a professional who's objective and can look at things differently for you, those are really important steps to take.
And I think we actually talked about it in the podcast with Mary Beth.
Did you? Okay.
One of the questions that I always teach individuals that I would love for you to expand on whether or not I'm right or wrong in doing is checking in with ourselves when we are using those trusted partners and saying to ourselves before we speak, what is it that I want them to do with this information?
Right.
Right? Because sometimes we recruit trusted partners to be affirmed or supported when maybe we need to be called out a little bit.
Yes.
Which is kind of like dealing with that negative energy and checking in with the reasons for why we're offended when that trusted partner probably has our best interest in their mindset. So what do you say about that? Like when you're showing up to get support, how can I check in with self first and make sure that I'm actually seeking support rather than looking for some of those people-pleasing qualities?
I think it has to do with, am I making progress or am I stuck? Is this the same old, same old? The difficulty with seeking help from friends, family, is that they oftentimes want to fix it for you. They feel your pain, and it's really difficult not to jump in and tell you that you're all right instead of calling you to task.
Oh, that's a great, great point to make. Change is difficult.
It is, absolutely, yes.
It is so difficult, and it often has a lot more to do with why we want to change. And that was one of the parts of coming into this limited series, was getting people to stop with the desire to change right off the bat and the do, and the get inside and listen to yourself and what do you really, really want to have for this year. And instead of 20 things, let's just start with one or two things.
Yeah.
And let it ripple.
Yeah, absolutely. But we don't think that. We don't think that a small baby step is going to have a ripple effect, but it does. I mean, whether you throw a rock into the pond or a tiny stone into the pond, they both create ripples. But what's manageable to you? You still have to live your life.
Right. How do you truly gauge the difference between doing things to satisfy other people, doing things out of fear, or doing things because it's what you really want? I know that's kind of a personal journey, but what are some questions, Barb, that you would offer to our listeners and watchers that they could kind of sit with so that they could discern which direction am I being led in so I know that I'm on my right path?
That's a good question. That's a deep question. I'm not sure that there's a simple answer to that. I think it starts with taking some quiet time, that 5-10 minutes a day. And maybe the first question is why? Why am I engaging this behavior? Is this a message that I've carried with me since childhood? What am I getting out of this behavior? And sometimes that's a really difficult question. What am I benefiting, because in psychology we talk about secondary gain. It's the gain that comes from being helpful because we feel good about ourselves, or and you know, I think it's really I think it takes a level of personal honesty to say, oh, I'm just doing that for the accolades. You know, nobody wants to admit that. That's hard.
It is. And actually, I say to everybody, we do nothing without personal gain.
Okay, yes.
I mean, we really don't. When we talk about helping other people, we help other people because it feels good for us. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, that's not secondary gain. And I'm going to challenge that, right?
Right?
It's primary gain.
Okay.
I mean, it, you know, when we, even if we take it down to weight loss, we lose weight to have a better sense of energy and a better sense of confidence for that better return on how people are engaging with us. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's interesting that a lot of the women who lose weight become very uncomfortable initially because of the attention they attract.
Right.
And the reason why they think they're attracting that attention also brings offense, because it shouldn't be, because I'm skinny. And they come in and they're, you know, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's not because you're skinnier. It's because you're more confident. Your energy is higher. You feel better. Mm-hmm. The benefits that are coming out are then making you a more attractable person.
Mm-hmm. Approachable, definitely.
And yes, very approachable. And so it's interesting because everybody is resistant to thinking, because we've been trained as society. Mm-hmm. Don't be selfish. Mm-hmm. Don't make it about you.
Right. Right.
So how can one actually step off into this year making it about them without feeling guilty? How do we get there?
That's right. Yeah. How do we get there? I really think that's a generational thing. I do. Okay. I think with this is just my personal opinion. I'm sure I could find a study about it, but I think with the introduction of women's sports, that changed things dramatically for women. You know, more confident in their bodies. When my daughter was in high school, she played water polo. She's a big girl, but very confident, and that whole team was very confident in their bodies, and I really admired that. But for my generation, we didn't have that, you know. Mm-hmm. We were lucky if we had gym. And so I think that the introduction of women's sports has helped that. Again, I think this is kind of a generational issue. Not that all women don't struggle with this stuff, but I think it's more of a generational issue then.
But you know what I love, what I hear you saying is we have a lot to learn from the younger women. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think sometimes super ego versus authentic, it's hard for us to set aside that matriarchal model mm-hmm. and be open to receiving and learning from some of the things that we're kind of like, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so in your experience, especially in your relational therapy, mm-hmm. right? Women are the competitive species.
Oh, we are.
We're the problem.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to say about that, but, you know, when we think about what we have to learn from self-acceptance and self-image, I think you make a good point. The other thing that is interesting to me is that we treat life as static. Mm-hmm. And it's not, it's very dynamic.
Right, right.
So just you retiring, how did that change what you thought you wanted to do? Like mm-hmm. everyone has this image when you're going into retirement mm-hmm. versus what you're actually doing now.
Right.
Can you talk about that role change?
I think that initially it was really spending some time figuring out what I wanted. I spent most of my life focusing on other people. And when I first retired, I could name 10 people and tell you what they wanted. I was not part of that 10. And so it took a long time for me to say, okay, what is it that, and use your name. Names are powerful. So when you talk to yourself, use your name. So I would say, Barb, what is it that you want today? That's what she would have wanted, or that's what he would have wanted. What is it that you really want? And I had to pause and reflect. And gradually it came. What was the slower thing to come was a sense of deserving. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with that word.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't like that word at all.
I know. Yeah.
I just have to share when I'm teaching class and the ladies are like, "Oh, you're going to be off. Oh, you deserve that." I'm like, "Oh, there is like a visceral that I can't stand, right?"
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And I have to tell you that it has been years in the making of receiving a gift without thinking that I had to go out and buy a return gift for twice the amount.
Yes. Oh.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it took me a long time to understand and appreciate that giving is universal.
Yes.
And so when someone gave something to me, or if I really never expended myself out with the objective of being returned, right? I never wanted that back, right? That was receiving, that was deserving. But I also understood that when I receive, like, I'm opening up that avenue for giving.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so let's just wrap it back around to that. Barb, what do you want today?
Mm-hmm.
How hard was it to listen to yourself?
It was very hard, I'll be honest. It was really hard. And I found myself slipping back because it was a much more comfortable role to pay attention to other people's needs than it was to mine. And so it was, and even in conversations, what I would find is people would ask me about myself and I would turn it around very quickly to focus on them. Yeah. So it's those subtle things, you make the first step, you make some progress, and then the layers of the onion start to peel away, and so, yeah, I would catch myself very frequently, okay, they can ask about you, that's okay.
Are there daily actions that you put into place? So when we talk about 30 Days to Better Balance,
right.
The reason why I did that book, right? The reason why I did it was because I needed people to small shifts consistently.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Small shifts consistently.
Right.
Huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say that you had a really hard time thinking about yourself versus other people, or turning it around, are there different things, different shifts to make, positions that we can put ourselves in? Sometimes we have to be intentional about these small needed changes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like saying no.
Right.
And then letting it go.
Oh, can I tell you, like, one of my favorite things about no is that women tend to over-explain. When we say no, we frequently end up explaining, and then what happens is people don't pay attention to us because they think the explaining is a request for help or solving a problem instead of just saying no. So practice just saying no. Or come up with a phrase, say, that's not going to work for me. And then be a broken record. One of the techniques that you can use is a broken record technique. That's just not going to work for me. But what about, because women are problem solvers, what about, that's just not going to work for me? And that is really, really difficult.
I think that's a great example, is saying no and letting go.
Yeah.
And I love that's just not going to work for me. Sometimes when I talk to women who have a very difficult saying no experience in their life, and no matter how much we work on it, I also suggest to them then that they turn and say, I am not going to be able to give you my best self. That's
Nice.
not going to work
Nice.
for me. I'm not going to be able to give you my best self. And making it about the other person if they absolutely can't come into play. But I think that's so important to remember that it's not like you make the decision to say no and it's going to come out easily. In fact, I find that it takes kind of a long time.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And so I love your broken record, and I think there's a lot of different ways that you can say things, but that you have to commit that when you look at your schedule and you decide that you're going to make a change, you have to lose something somewhere in order to do something.
Right. Right.
It's not like you can add more. There isn't one person out in our world today that can add more to their plate. I promise you that.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
And so one of the things that we talked about in the tools for change was if you're going to bring something on, if you're making a whole nother shift, maybe of something that you don't do now that you need to do, like for instance, exercising for 30 minutes a day, where is that 30 minutes coming from? And a lot of that has to do with that no, because as women, we just give our time away.
Yes. Yes.
We exhaust ourselves, don't you think, a little bit in giving our times away? And
Absolutely. We're at the bottom of the list. And, by the time the day is done and we've given, we have no energy to give to ourselves. And so you're right. It's really important to be mindful of where that energy is going to come from or where we're going to come from.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. So can we kind of talk about those roles when we're in a relation, with other people? And particularly, let's talk first about spouse or partner, because then I want to dive into the role change of being a parent versus being a partner, and then on to the wonderful role that you're about to experience, grandparenting. So let's talk about when we set ourselves into a site of change, how do we get real in our hearts with how the people in our lives play a role in our ability to see that through? And then I'll kind of follow that up with, what are some things that we can do to make that manageable when it doesn't feel possible?
Okay, that's a lot to unpack.
Well, you know me. I mean,
That's right.
I'm going to bring it, sister.
Right.
I'm bringing it.
But I think you said it. You said not speaking. So it's finding your voice and expressing that voice in small ways. So if you can't even talk about, I'm going to make broccoli tonight for dinner, there's a problem. Okay, so yeah. And again, it is, I think, emblematic of being other focused. Okay. He won't like it. Well, if you make broccoli and he doesn't eat it,
You have more broccoli for tomorrow.
right, exactly.
That's kind of what I say is, you have more broccoli for tomorrow. Yeah.
Right, exactly it. So it's that huge shift from other focused, not that we're going to ignore people or not be sensitive to their needs. That's an important part of being in a partnership, obviously. But what your needs count too, and believing that your needs count too, and speaking your voice, truth, whatever you want to label that, even in small things.
Oh, and I think that's where you said the broken record philosophy.
Right.
It's the small things that, and I think you will agree that a lot of times the relational strife that we might experience comes with a lot of assumptions.
Yes.
Assumptions of expectations, assumptions of emotions, and so we refrain from coming forward, and then we allow all these resentments and these energies to build. And then when we go to want to make change, we're angry Because we feel like you're the reason why I can't make this change, when in fact, when approached in those small subtle ways, like, honey, I'd rather not have my coffee in that manner. Can I just make it?
Right.
Versus, oh, I hate drinking this coffee, but he just expects that he can make. It's a different mode. I agree.
Well, I also think that it's the belief that somehow relationships are static. And you said earlier, life is not static. And so, I think we tend to treat our partners, particularly in long-term relationships, I think I know this person, instead of taking the time to learn how that person has evolved or changed, even under our own, like, looking at it. I think it's really important to realize that people and relationships and life in general is not static. And so your partner's going to change. It's okay that you change.
And I think, too, that one of the things we also have to remember is that we can allow other people to have an opinion. Going back to, I don't share with my clients or suggest that they tell everybody about their changes.
Right.
Because everybody's an expert. And
That's true.
I don't know that I want your noise to influence my decluttering of the chaos and noise inside. So I'm going to be very careful with that. But I also give them permission to say, especially to those that are loved ones, I'll take that into consideration. Because we're all fixers. It doesn't matter if we're male or female.
No,
we're all
true.
fixers.
Right.
We all want you to get to the quickest solution in the shortest amount of time, and we know how to make that happen.
Because then we won't be uncomfortable.
Yes.
We won't be uncomfortable with your change. If you do it quickly and you change the way I want you to change,
we're all good, right?
We're all good. That's
so it's okay to say, I'll take that into consideration, or thank you for being helpful. You don't always have to act upon other people, right?
No.
And that helps us kind of manage some of these shifts and transitions in the roles of our lives. It's funny, I read something and it was perfect. Life is a series of micro retirements over and over and over again.
I like that.
I really did like that. And I was like, wow, that is an aha moment if there is ever one.
Yeah.
Because you have this ideal circumstance in this situation. Even like with my weight loss clients, I just had a conversation with a gentleman in Georgia, and I said, here's where you're going to go back 20 pounds. You think you know everything and you've learned everything from me, but you're a very different person today than you were a year and a half ago when we started working together.
Yes.
And so guess what? It's time to learn new stuff.
Right? There you go. Yes, absolutely.
And we learn it together. And when people think about the changes that they want to make in their life, they don't think about the health of flexibility or what they're going to lose in that change. That's big, because then they don't prepare for the grief.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what would you say in your own retirement, Barb, and what you had thought about versus finding this space like, oh, wow, I now can focus on me. But how did that kind of feel a little sad to you? What were you losing?
Well, I think it was losing the comfort of familiarity. And that's really difficult for people. People are designed, our brains neurologically are designed for sameness, because that means survival, because that's security. And so that loss of familiarity with any sort of change is difficult to a greater or lesser extent depending on what you're doing. For me, understanding and believing that adaptability and flexibility is key to successful aging. Our bodies change as we age. We can't do what we did before, but if we still hold on to the past. I always did it this way. This is always how we have done it. You don't move forward successfully. And I think that that's true, whatever stage of life you're in. But for me personally, it's as I age and move toward retire, being more into retirement.
So you're going to be a grandma.
Yeah, I am.
And that is so cool.
Yes.
And, I have 10 grandchildren, and
Yes.
I really do love that. I want to talk about one of the biggest challenges of changing in life. And it is transitioning from parenting to partnering. And so you had talked about how this generation is different, and boy, it like there was like, it was a punch in the gut. I went from parents who were extremely intrusive, very opinionated. Actually, I had two different roles. I have a father who is very opinionated. I love him. I'm very proud to be my father's daughter. Very proud. But he doesn't know when not to have a comment. He doesn't always think about where he's coming from. And I've learned through some very difficult times with my own children, as I changed and evolved and became more of who I wanted to be authentically, there was some damage control because of that, because it was hard to transition out of that role of, I need to fix you,
Right.
and you need to listen to me, to, how can I help you? But here's the freeing part, Barb. My relationship with my children, as a result of evaluating that role shift, it's so much better. And what I realized was I lived a lot of my life making decisions based on who I thought my children wanted me to be and wanted me to do, which I was not wholeheartedly happy about, to being me freely and actually enjoying space with them. And no one ever told me that was going to happen. No one told me. Talk to me about that. What the heck?
Great process.
What the heck?
Process. I love it. That's great.
But really, talk to me about that. I think it's important for our listeners to really hear us say, one, it's okay, and two, get ready, because it sucks.
It's true. Talk about like losing yourself or losing those familiar and comfortable roles. It is very difficult. And again, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and it takes a lot of pulling back. It takes a lot of zipping your lip. But one of the things that I have found helpful is that if we take ownership of our children's problems by fixing them, even though we may be very wise and have gone through the same things, they never own their own growth. It's mom did it for me, mom fixed it for me, and I could probably name several people who are, I'm trying to find the right word, destroyed as adults because their parents fixed everything and continued to do that when they were 40 some years old. It's really, the most difficult thing I think is to see our children suffer. And so out of compassion, wisdom, our own life experience, we try to rush in and fix it for them, but then they never take ownership of it. And I think it's really important to allow our children to have ownership of their own journey, their own path, their own lessons, whatever we would like to label it.
Well, and I think one of the things, too, that is important to share there is we put a lot of our own value on what we have not done for ourselves, or what we think other people's reflections of us individually. Remember, I said we don't do anything solely for another, right? So we step in to try and fix our kids so that when people look at what our kids are or what they've done, then there's a positive reflection on us. And that's kind of a big thing to kind of come to a censored sense of acceptance with. I always say, I've given you all of the tools and now I have to give you the freedom to use them. And what you do with them does not reflect personally on me. And that's a tough acceptance in role transition.
Right. Yes, it is. Very definitely. But well put, Yeah, that's powerful.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is. Definitely.
So I want to bring it back around to the clarity and trusting of our inner self, because she's the wisest
Right. Yes.
about who we are and what we
Absolutely.
want and how to get there.
Right.
So let's just give everyone, if you don't mind, Barb, some simple little pearls of wisdom about how to quiet the chaos and come back to self.
Okay. Remember, it's a process. Okay. So you're not going to get this overnight. The ebbs and flows of working on yourself are just part of it and valuable. Okay. 5 to 10 minutes of quiet a day. And it doesn't really matter whether, you're leaving work and instead of putting the key in the ignition and buzzing out of the parking lot, you take 5 or 10 minutes to just breathe, focus, shift your thinking. Give yourself a pat on the back. What did you do good? We have a list of things that we do wrong. But practice the compassion that you give to other people for yourself. So self-compassion is really important on this journey, I think. Journaling, I think, cannot be underestimated. It's not for everyone, but it's a way to become a little bit more objective. Movement is important. But I think it starts with quiet. I do.
Some people are uncomfortable with quiet, but
Yes.
I'm hoping that in this podcast series, you're becoming more and more comfortable in that space. And I can't thank you enough for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is
was
great
so
fun. Yes.
And I look forward to the next podcast in which we're going to kind of dive into the tools and how to get it done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.